Hello, I'm Sharon Epperson, CNBC Senior Personal Finance Correspondent, and I'm so honored to be with you all today for a special Junior Achievement and CNBC Virtual Summit. There's been a growing conversation in this country about race and opportunity, and part of that conversation is focused on how we can make our professional, educational, and societal institutions more equitable for all. Today, we want to extend that conversation to include America's teenagers. In a survey that was just released yesterday that was done by Junior Achievement, nearly 3/4 of teens said they believe systemic racism exists, and more than 3/4 of them say they don't believe that everyone has an equal economic opportunity. So how do we change that? Well, a good starting point is having candid conversations with each other in forums just like this one. And that's why we're so proud to partner with Junior Achievement today to give students across the nation a chance to ask their questions about economic disparity, financial literacy, and how to level the playing field and increase opportunities for the next generation. I'm so excited to introduce Jack Kozakowski, who is the president and CEO of Junior Achievement, and he's with us today. Jack, we're so glad to be partnering with you once again for this very important summit.
Well, thank you, Sharon. We really appreciate CNBC and Acorns partnering with Junior Achievement on this very important virtual summit. You know, economic disparity has been a challenge for our nation for decades, and the events of this past year have highlighted just how deep that divide is, especially as it relates to race, ethnicity, and gender. You know, research from the Brookings Institution shows that the median net worth of Black and Hispanic families in the United States is 10 times less than that of white families. And we all know about the wage disparity that exists between men and women in this country. And so it's no surprise that the young people in our country see this. You mentioned the research that was just done by Junior Achievement that shows that most American teens believe that people are paid less in our country based on their race, their ethnicity, and their gender. And this survey also shows that teens believe that education is the most important and effective way to deal with this economic disparity. We at Junior Achievement are part of that solution by providing education that's focused on financial literacy, career readiness, and entrepreneurship. We see this summit as just a very important part of that entire educational process. So special thanks today to all of our panelists to be here to share your knowledge and your personal story with these young people. You're giving them a very special gift, a gift that's even more important in this environment, and that's the gift of hope. So again, thank you to CNBC, thank you to Acorns, and special thanks to all of our panelists and to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks so much. And you're right, in this giving season, we are giving everyone a great gift at this particular time, especially with this tremendous panel that we have. So let's meet them. And they'll be answering the questions from the students that are coming from all over the country. We have Sahil Bloom, who is a vice president at Altamont Capital Partners. That's an investment fund with over $2.5 billion under management. Sahil also has built a platform on Twitter focused on financial education and literacy. Rianka Dorsonville is a financial planner and the co-founder and co-CEO of 2050 Wealth Partners. She also hosts a podcast called 2050 Trailblazers, where she talks about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the financial planning industry. And Rianka is a member of the CNBC family. She is a member of the CNBC Financial Advisor Council as well. Yaneli Espinal is the Director of Educational Outreach at NextGen Personal Finance, and she's created a YouTube channel that you got to check out called Miss Be Helpful, and that's to teach users about financial literacy. And you all probably know this face. Akbar Bajibiamila is also with us today. He was playing in the NFL, and Akbar started a financial literacy campaign to teach children about the importance of knowing how money works. You may not have known that part, but I know you know that he is the host of NBC's hit show American Ninja Warrior. He's also authored the book Everyone Can Be a Ninja. And Akbar, we're so happy to have you as a member of the CNBC family too. You are a member of the CNBC Financial Wellness Advisory Council. Thank you all so much for being here and for your willingness to share your ideas, your resources, your skills. to help the students become better leaders of tomorrow. So I want to get started with our first question and our first student. Amila Bell is 17 years old. She's joining us today from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and she attends Rufus King High School. Amila, thank you so much for being here. And what is your question for our panel?
Hi, Sharon. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. My question is, attending an inner city public school, I noticed that financial literacy isn't mandatory to teach, and most students gain their financial knowledge through electives or not at all. What can teenagers do to provide themselves with the most financial knowledge that they can then apply in their adult life?
Amila, you're absolutely right. Financial literacy courses are not mandatory in schools. In fact, only about 6 states require high schoolers to take a personal finance course in order to graduate. And so, Yaneli, as Director of Educational Outreach at Next Gen Personal Finance, what is your advice for Amila?
I think I can speak to this in 2 ways. One is from the Director of Educational Outreach perspective, but the other perspective I can speak to is being a child who grew up in a low-income environment and attended public schools that were Title I funded my whole life in New York City. And like you, I didn't get a chance to take these classes. So what I would do if I could go back and be 15 or 16 years old again, of course, everyone's going to tell you, you got to learn, you got to read books, you got to watch videos, you have to immerse yourself in this knowledge. But the reality is that when I was 15 and 16 years old, I was focused on who I had a crush on. I was focused on celebrity drama. I wanted to know which rapper was dating what rapper girlfriend, and all that stuff was what I cared about, what name brands I was wearing. So we have to meet you where you are. Okay. As a teenager, there are things that you care about, that are not going to be in textbooks all the time. But you have to find a way to balance out what you care about and you're already doing and what matters for your future. So I would say go on social media, because I know you're already there. You're on TikTok, you're on Instagram, you're on Twitter. So follow hashtags that will teach you about personal finance. Hashtag financial literacy, hashtag personal finance, hashtag savings goals, hashtag investing 101, hashtag debt free. These are the types of things that will help you to put into your feed on social media information about personal finance from a social media perspective, right? Quotes and information, links from financial influencers that are funny, that are young, that are relatable. So you can just kind of blend it in with what you're already doing and start learning early. And then the second thing I would say is just really make sure that you're advocating for the kids that are coming up behind you. Because the reality is that your little cousins and the kids in your community and, your little brothers and sisters, they're going to end up going to the public school that you went to as well. And if they didn't have the classes when you were there, chances are they're not going to have them for your little brothers and sisters and your little cousins and the kids in your community. So you have to advocate for your school to make change so that the next generation of students actually does learn it. And you can do that by starting a petition, by becoming a student advocate so that you can demand the change for your generation. Yeah.
That's great advice, Yaneli. That's great advice. I want to get you in, Rianka, because as a financial advisor who also has a podcast reaching a wide range of ages, what do you think that Amila should do to make sure that education happens in the schools and outside the schools?
Absolutely. Well, Amila, I will say that as you learn about personal finance, let me just tell you, it may feel overwhelming, but just like what Yaneli has shared with us, we are going to meet you where you are. So there are so many good information and resources on social media. Follow those hashtags. And as you follow those hashtags, try not to become overwhelmed, because personal finance, there are so many subject areas to learn about. I have a whole career in personal finance. So trust me, as we continue to learn and build, just think about one subject area at a time. Now, as far as resources, Junior Achievement provides self-taught downloadable material on their site. And also, if your parents are affiliated with a bank, your parents or family members, reach out to them and ask, what free materials can you provide to me as I am building on my personal finance knowledge?
Excellent. And I think you both pointed this out with the hashtags, but you all should be sharing among yourselves as well. When you get a personal finance tip, when you learn something new about money, share it on social media, spread the word, educate one another. I think that's very important as well. We're going to move on now to our next student, 16-year-old Patrick Hurd from Bettendorf High School in Iowa. And he has a question about the exclusionary cost of college. Patrick?
Yes, thank you for having me, and I'm very thankful to be able to represent Iowa. So my question was, what impact does rising college tuition have on young students like me to successfully and accurately plan for their future? And furthermore, what does a college degree do if college graduates are getting higher paying jobs, but they're riddled with debt?
Absolutely. Sahil, what are your thoughts? Is it worth it?
Yeah, this is a great question, Patrick, and I really appreciate it. You know, it's a huge issue. College tuition costs have risen 25, 30% over the last 10 years. You know, I would start by saying that I do believe the walls of credentialism are starting to crack, meaning the idea, which was once absolute, that you had to get a college degree in order to get a successful job and take care of your family and friends, is starting to break down at the slightest bit. You're starting to see companies looking past just a piece of paper and looking to the hard skills that you're developing. And you're starting to see alternatives pop up that allow you to develop those skills in a different context other than a four-year college institution. So I would encourage young people to look at all of their options as they think about what comes after high school. That being said, if you are going the traditional college route, as I did, think about the ROI. Think about the return on the investment of what you're putting in and what you're investing in that education. Look into the jobs, the degrees that are getting you the highest paying jobs on the back end of it, and make sure that you're doing that research as you go in so that you know what you're going to get out of it.
That's excellent, Sahil. Thank you very, very much. You know, I want to right now introduce a very special guest that we have with us today. He is the president and CEO of the Nashville Urban League, a very dear friend, and his name is Mark Morial. Mark, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Sharon.
Glad
Thanks
to
for
talk
having
to
me.
you and talk to you about your book too, The Gumbo Coalition. I got to tell you
Gumbo
guys about that.
Coalition.
10
Yeah,
leadership
thank you.
lessons that help you inspire, unite, and achieve. It was just published earlier this year, and I know you're talking to students all the time, Mark. We have one, Emelina Simonis, Emelina, who is a student at Junior Achievement Academy in Orlando, Florida. And Emelina, what is your question for Mark?
Thanks, Emelina.
Hi, Mark. So my question was, how are students from low socioeconomic backgrounds expected to go into successful and profitable fields if they don't see people who look like them in those fields?
It's a very big problem, and it's a problem that we work every day to address. The idea that there are not enough role models in a given field. But I will say this to you, that in today's world, because of social media and the advent of media, there is not a single profession in the world that you can't find a successful Black person or a successful Latinx person in. They may not be in front of you. You may not know them, but they are absolutely out there. And that's not to say that there are not enough role models, not enough people of color, not enough Black people, not enough brown people occupying positions of leadership and power in the United States of America. It is to say that sometimes you can find your inspiration in other ways. As a boy growing up, I found inspiration in the successful Black men and Black women who were in my neighborhood or in my parents' circle. But I also found inspiration by reading the pages of Jet Magazine, the pages of Ebony Magazine, the pages of Essence Magazine, the pages of Black Enterprise Magazine, where I saw role models who didn't live in my community, but they were successful members of Congress or successful business people or successful creative people or successful conscious athletes that I followed because I was a high school football and basketball player. And finding athletes who not only succeeded on the field, but also who made careers after their playing life really was something that really motivated me. When I saw the late Gale Sayers, who became a successful businessman in the 1970s and found his way on the Black Enterprise list of 100 largest businesses as a for example. So I'm going to tell you to be encouraged and that we've got to fight to create more role models, but that you give it your best. And those role models may not be immediate, but they are out there. We have had people who look like you and I achieve in every walk of life in this country. Not numerous enough, but they are there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mark, we want to get another question from Marietta, Georgia. Maria Martinez is a sophomore at Osborne High School. And Maria, go ahead with your question.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My question is, What is the nation's most urgent challenges related to employment for people of color?
You know, Mark, this is
I
something
think
that the Urban
one of
League
the most
addresses, and you write about it in your book about diversity and inclusion, and the health and success of organizations and how that coalition building can lead to that. How would you answer Maria's
I would
question?
say that so many people of color do not have the opportunity to work in a job that's consistent with their abilities in education. That there are also too many barriers to upward mobility, the ability to move into a job and be promoted along the way. There are studies out there which demonstrate that, for example, that if you took two college graduates, a Black person and a white person from the very same school, who made the very same grades and had almost exact profiles, let's say from 1990, and looked 20 years later, on average, what their income and their wealth was, that there would still be a disparity. So while education can be a partial equalizer, and I'm a strong proponent of education and training, we've also got to purge racism and discrimination from the economic marketplaces of America. The perception that a Black person or a brown person is not sometimes as qualified as a white person, so that people are seen for who they are, for the qualifications they have, and for the assets they have. And this is really an important part of addressing this subconscious bias that exists within all of us. And it leads to perceptions and it leads to stereotypes. But I'll tell you the same thing. Your generation, like the generation of my parents and grandparents, like my generation, you also have to be people who want to knock down barriers and not be frustrated because there may be barriers in front of you, and not get deterred and not get dejected and not, it is work and it is a fight. But part of our responsibility in each generation is not only to make it better for me, but also to make it better for the next generation. And I take that responsibility very seriously, and urge all of you to take that responsibility very seriously. We have work to do in this country to knock down barriers, but let's continue to fight to knock them down.
Absolutely. And Mark, there is so much encouragement that teenagers can get just from following you, from following the National Urban League, from going to webinars, looking at when you're fighting and when you're doing what Mark is saying to do, know that there are many people that are working with you already and have ideas and have suggestions, but want your ideas too. So I think, Mark, you would agree that getting more of them involved with the National Urban League is also a good way to really move it forward. And thank you so much for all you do.
Let me do this too. I just want to lift you up because Sharon Epperson is a pioneer as a longtime correspondent at CNBC, who's made great strides in knocking down barriers in business journalism, which is not a component of journalism where there is a lot of diversity. And so, Sharon, you're a role model for many young journalists and many young business people. And we have to acknowledge that each of us can be a role model for others. And sometimes a person who's on the cutting edge may look around and not see anybody like them ahead of them, but maybe we're going to see them behind us, and we got to hold them up, lift them up, push them, encourage them along the journey also. So I just wanted to say that, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts with our teens today. And we look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Good luck to all.
All right. Take care. We're going to continue now and go to Baltimore, Maryland, where we have Samantha Ogundary, who is a junior at Notre Dame Preparatory School. She's been active in JA for 2 years. And Samantha, what is your question?
Hello, and a warm welcome, or really not so warm with the weather we've been having in Baltimore. But my question is, and I think it's quite an important one, how can individuals get involved to assist economically marginalized students in accumulating real-world job experiences?
Well, Akbar, you grew up as one of 6 kids on the south side of LA. You found success as a professional athlete, now a television personality, an entrepreneur, a financial literacy advocate. What's your advice for Samantha?
Well, Samantha, I would just say, coming from a Nigerian household, there was one thing that I knew, it was to be resourceful. My parents always taught me how to be resourceful. It was introducing me to this doctor and that lawyer and this accountant and that person. And I think, especially when you're young, sometimes the tendency is to maybe just stay on social media or maybe not to engage socially. But I think there's so much power. There's a lot of power in social media, but there's also a lot of power in socializing and meeting people. I always say that your net worth is associated to your network. I'm going to say it again. Your net worth is associated to your network. So the network of people that you accumulate, just like followers, there's a lot of similarities in there. Just like in followers, you want to be able to accumulate your followers. You want to be able to accumulate your network of people. Like, oh, my mom knows this, pediatrician. My mom knows this doctor, and so on and so forth. And you engage, you ask questions, no different than dropping into somebody's DM or you're dropping into somebody's comments and you're making discussion. You're engaging with them. Same thing you want to do socially. You want to be able to engage with those who are around you. Because if you live in a world where you isolate yourself in a bubble and you're just you and your device, then you will miss out on opportunities. And, now obviously, there's the social and economic, it's like who's around you, who's in your circle. I would encourage all of you guys to step out and go beyond your bubble. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles and my bubble was very tight. And I had some exposure, but I had to reach beyond the bubble to be able to get those exposure. And that's where I think I found a lot of success. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that it's dependent on race as well, because there's a lot of Black high power influence. There's a lot of people of different colors that have influence that you can go out and reach. And I would say, I wouldn't just be stuck to one. Oh, well, I can only reach out, to, my white counterparts, or I can only reach out to this counterpart. Reach out to a diverse group and you'll see that the people be, likely to open up to you. I'll tell you a quick story. When I got done in the NFL, I wanted to get into broadcasting. I really wanted it badly. But the thing was, I didn't have a big enough name. People didn't know me. I had a brother who was really popular, but I wasn't that popular. So I spent a lot of time in San Diego. I went to San Diego State. I also played for the San Diego Chargers for a little bit. So what I did was I actually went to the local station, NBC station, and I said, hey, my name is Akbar, went to San Diego State. I played for the Chargers. I'd love to do the post-game show. I put myself out there. Now, they could have just said, what? Who does that? And I said, oh, by the way, I'll work for free. So I forced my way into an internship. And so that's what I mean when I say to be resourceful. You want to be resourceful. It's like, you never know. Sometimes you've heard the saying, closed mouths don't get fed. Sometimes it's as simple as asking.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that network is key in terms of access to capital and getting capital as well. Junior Achievement's recent survey found that 69% of teens believe people have a harder time getting financial support to start a business based on race, ethnicity, or gender. 16-year-old Avik Mishra is joining us from our neck of the woods, actually, in East Brunswick, New Jersey. He has a question about starting a business. Avik?
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Sharon. My question is, when starting a consumer-facing business from the ground up, a major issue many face is gaining the initial traction to spread it beyond family members and friends. Many startups fail to make the first million, but many others also fail to make the first dollar. What would you suggest in order to gain that initial traction as a consumer-facing business? How do you get that first dollar, and what separates the startups that succeed from the ones that don't?
That's a great question, Akbar. What do you think?
Well, I think it comes down to execution. Execution is going to be the determining factor that grows your business or kills your business. So what tends to happen, and I just went through this myself during the COVID period, but you have this idea, and this idea then goes, yeah, that's great. And then your family, they're gassing you up. They're all excited. Everyone around you is excited about it. And then you want to try to move this thing around your uncles, your aunts, your brothers, your sister. And then it's like, okay, hold on. What's the game plan? And so coming from a football world, I'm very keen on having a game plan. I never went into a game without my playbook because we had to understand how to execute it. Not only do you have the playbook, how do you execute it? So it's one thing to go, hey, mom, dad, give me a playbook, or, go to this mentor, give me a playbook. But how do you execute it? And I think that's going to be the biggest issue. Oftentimes, it's easy to want to just jump in and make the money. Before you ever make the money, the first dollar or the $1 million, you have to understand how is it that you're going to execute this plan and get it out. What is your overall understanding of the market? Do you have an understanding of the market? What's the product? How much does the product cost? What is it that you're trying to do? What is your goal? What is your why? Is it just to become rich, or is it that you're trying to resolve an issue or a problem, or you see an opening in the market? So once you kind of key in on that, because sometimes we stumble on things, right? Maybe there's like, oh, I created this cool t-shirt and everyone's going crazy over it, but I have no execution. So oftentimes what's going to happen is that business is going to fall. And so, and then there's the other parts of it too, that I think some of the other panelists can really kind of chime in on, but then you want to say, okay, how do I get access to capital? Trying to figure out, be able to get access to capital so you can grow. But I will tell you this, no one's giving you capital if you don't have a business plan, a plan to execute and grow your business beyond.
That's absolutely right, Akbar. And next we're going to talk about with Sabrina Wynn from Kelloggsville High School in Kentwood, Michigan. Sabrina's 17, and she actually started her own business, selling apparel with junior achievement during her junior year in high school. And she has a question about the economic opportunity for entrepreneurs. Sabrina?
Hi, thank you for having me. Does the income disparity in communities affect educational outcomes for low-income students? If so, then what are the possible solutions?
Rianka, what are your thoughts for Sabrina, sorry.
Absolutely. Sabrina, this is a really important question, and it's an honest question, and I'm so happy you asked it. And I would love to say that income disparity has no effect on educational outcomes for low-income students, but research says otherwise. So we must I want you to focus on what's in our control, which is advocating for high quality programs in our schools, in our communities when possible. Let's make sure we keep STEM in our schools and also the fine arts. And also be inquisitive, just like you are now. Continue it. Please do not stop. Ask a lot of questions of your teachers and also your community leaders. And where and when you can, become involved in community oriented clubs and activities, because as Akbar said, your net worth is associated with your network. And know that when you can open your own doors through these engagements, please do, and take other people with you.
Excellent advice. Next, we're going to head to Phoenix, Arizona, and there we have our youngest student who's joining us today. Colin Marquez is an 8th grader at Diamond Canyon School. And Colin, can you go ahead with your question?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So my question is, why do students have to learn so many things in math that they can never apply to the real world? Instead, should we be learning more things that focus on financial literacy? For example, in the JA program, we learn many things that have to do with finances. But in our everyday math classes, we learn things like algebra that we can never use. So, should students focus more on financial literacy in the classroom?
I love this kid.
I know. I mean, Sahil, I have 2 teenagers that are taking math right now in the room next door, and they're very interested in the answer to this question too. You've been building your following on Twitter. You kind of break down finance topics in such an understandable way. What do you think should happen here?
Yeah. First off, I think this is an awesome question. I can hear Akbar laughing in the background. I feel the same way. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I was in your shoes, buddy. And I felt like, look, I'm learning about isosceles triangles and the Ming Dynasty and all sorts of geometry and all those problems, but I'm not learning about budgeting. I'm not learning about taxes. I'm not learning about investing. I'm not learning about all these things that are so important for wealth creation, for supporting my family and friends and taking care of them and taking care of my life in the way I want to. So I think this is one of the great travesties of our current education system, and it needs to change. We need a national mandate around financial literacy in schools. There needs to be a basic level of learning on these topics that kids get. And look, we need to do it in a way that is different. We need to do it in a way that kids can absorb, that is digestible for them, that's accessible. Kids are surrounded by content. I mean, there's everything. There's TikToks around you, Netflix, you have all these different shows, all the movies, everything's coming at you. Kids' attention spans are different. We can't just go back to the traditional ways of textbook learning, problem sets to learn about these things. We need to deliver the information in a way that kids can absorb, and it needs to change.
Yeah, so hell, my son keeps asking me when I'm doing a TikTok on personal finance. I don't really think I can do that, but the panel that we have here and your network, I know there are plenty, and there are plenty of people for you to follow to kind of get the information. You just need to get a little bit, and then you can do more research on your own. We want to go to Maryland now, where 17-year-old Makita Daring is attending Chesapeake Math and IT Academy, talking about math and IT. Makita, what's your question?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Today my question is, what should a student learn about economics that the education system doesn't specifically teach?
Bianca, as a certified financial planner, meeting a lot of individuals, talking about saving and spending, investing, what should students like Makita know in terms of their own economics?
I think that understanding cash flow is a very basic but important economic principle that everyone should have a handle on. And I always share, it's not about how much you make, rather how much you keep. And I have a wide array of clients, and I share with them the same thing. I don't care if you're a thousandaire or a millionaire, everyone needs a budget. And once you have a budget, you can be more thoughtful with achieving your goals and aligning your values with your spending habits. Now, listen, if you can master the concept of cash flow as a teenager, you are going to be light years ahead of any adult.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Sahil, you were talking about isosceles triangles, but you definitely learned a lot about economic principles at Stanford. And is there one that stands out that you can actually use and apply to your daily finances? What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, a lot of life comes down to compound interest. It's this idea of, in simple terms, the idea that you're getting interest paid on the interest you're earning over time. The gains are accruing on top of gains you've already received. Einstein is rumored to have said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. It's that powerful of a concept. Learning about that, it applies to investing. Warren Buffett, the famous investor, he's a huge fan of compounding. It applies to your life. You can compound knowledge over time. You're building knowledge on top of the knowledge you already have. It applies to your relationships with your family, with friends. You can strengthen on the base you've already built. It's really an incredible thing once you learn and internalize that concept of compound interest.
Yeah, it's a great concept and a very, very important one in terms of building wealth. Absolutely. Roberto Gonzalez is going to join us now. He's a senior at Kelloggsville High School in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And Roberto, what's your question?
Hey, good afternoon to all from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm grateful to be here and thanks for having me. My question is, does financial literacy actually reduce economic inequality?
Yaneli, what do you think?
Excellent question. By itself, no. In collaboration with other efforts, absolutely 100% yes. There's research that shows that improving financial knowledge and increasing financial knowledge through personal finance education directly connects to how much wealth inequality there is. So you can actually have more wealth for yourself when you understand different financial concepts like investing, like saving, like avoiding predatory lending practices. There's the banking industry made $30 billion and over $30 billion in 2019 alone, just off overdrafting fees. So this is why at NGPF, for example, we teach students what an online bank account looks like. And you log in and do a simulation so you can understand, so you can avoid overdraft fees, so you can understand these systems at play, because financial knowledge and education by itself won't work if we don't couple it with the capacity and the capability for you to go out and put into practice those skills and the knowledge that you're learning in your personal finance class. But I absolutely agree with Sahil. It needs to be a national mandate. Every single state needs to require a full semester standalone course. And that's why we do the work that we do.
Absolutely. 6 is definitely not enough. 6 states, not enough. Needs to be in every school. And probably starting before high school, wouldn't you say, Yaneli? I mean, it should start even earlier.
Absolutely. It just definitely start earlier. There are states that even have mandates at the middle school level, and NGPF actually just released a middle school curriculum. So I think that there's opportunity K through 12. It doesn't just have to be high school. I totally agree.
Yeah, I want to get over to Jack Bonneau now. He's 14 years old. He's from Broomfield, Colorado. He has a question about teens and opportunities available to them in a gig economy. He's no stranger to the side hustle, though. He has four years ago, actually, he appeared on Shark Tank, and his company was featured there, and he was able to make a deal. And now he has a second company. It's called teenhustle.com. Jack, what is your question for the panel?
Thank you, Sharon and JA, for this opportunity today. Decades ago, there were millions of kids who had their own paper routes. They learned about business, financial literacy, developed social and life skills, and that lasted their entire lives. But kids and teens today don't have these types of opportunities that they can plug into. My question is, with today's gig economy, how can we bring these types of opportunities to kids and teens today?
It's a great question. And Akbar, you wrote the book, Everyone Can Be a Ninja, right? So how should they do it?
Yeah, everyone can be a ninja. And I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, which is really just kind of tapping into the resources. I think those opportunities, Jack, they are there. They're there. But I think, kids have to expand themselves beyond their comfort level. And I like to say that you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And again, it's very easy to stay in front of your device. And there's a lot of things, and I'm seeing a lot of people taking advantage of the digital opportunities that are out there. But there are also those skill sets and those brick and mortar type of opportunities that are still out there that you can go out there and reach out to. And a lot of that is, even the internship, and at the risk of sounding like the old dude in the room, shadowing, your father, or shadowing your mother, shadowing your uncle, and learning what they do. Because a lot of times when you learn that business, you look at some of the generational wealths in this country, generational wealth, a lot of that stuff was passed down, but it wasn't just, hey, here you go, I'm gonna pass this down to you. If I pass you a ball and you don't know how to shoot it, you're not gonna do anything with it. So it's understanding the game that they're playing, and it's being able to identify what is it that you're interested in. You know what? My dad, real story, was a plumber. I knew at an early age when I shadowed my dad, I respect that my dad does this, but I'm not doing that. This is not for me. So what that did was having to go to work with my dad forced me to have an idea. Hold on. What is it that you want to do? I didn't want to sit in my mom's shop because I wasn't going to do hair. I didn't like that. I didn't like the smell of jerry curls. Don't worry about it, Jack. You don't know what jerry curls are. It was an old school thing. But I knew then that's like, okay, I got to figure this out. So it works both ways. You may absolutely hate the exposure that you get to another field, and it forces you to go, you know what? I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to find someone else who's doing something that I'm interested in. And you, Jack, first off, kudos to you for starting your own business. I mean, I get so inspired, when I see young kids figuring it out, whether it's in the digital space or whether it's, you've got, a tangible business that you can move, move product around. Your business, to me, I think is motivating to all the kids here who are watching this. It's like, people should be hitting you up and sliding into your DM. Mm-hmm. I know you probably got a DM too, right? So they should be sliding in and asking you questions and wanting to meet you. Hey, I was sitting on this virtual summit. I'd like to pick your brain. And that's how the conversation gets started.
Absolutely. Rianka, I want to bring you in here because I know as an entrepreneur now, you didn't actually start your career after college thinking you were going to be an entrepreneur. Sometimes you're in a situation where you're working for a company and kind of how Akbar highlighted, something happens and you're like, wait a minute, I think there's a better way that I can do this and I can pursue my passion and make money at the same time. So you've had a couple businesses, you're in a partnership now, and so that's even a different type of business. Can you talk a little bit about kind of deciding to be an entrepreneur and how it may just happen because the alternatives are not ones that you want to go into?
Yes, absolutely. So just like Sharon has shared, I did not start my career as a financial planner thinking that I was going to be a business owner. I love personal finance. I love teaching people about personal finance. I love seeing the light bulb, go off when they get this aha moment. Like that's what brings me joy. And just like Sharon said, and what has been shared here today, sometimes we take a different path. And my path led me to leave corporate America and start my own firm. And before I started my firm, it's an acronym that I always share with aspiring business owners is ABS. Always be sharing. Just because you build a business does not mean they will come. People need to know and actually know that you have a business and what products or services that you are offering. My firm, our firm, 2050 Wealth Partners, is a consumer facing. And so some of the things that we had to do was build third-party credibility. And so not only, am I a financial advisor, I love writing as well. And so I write and people can find me. And so these are just some areas and some ways that if you do decide to build your business, ABS, always be sharing.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. I want to get to Jayshree right now. Jayshree Srinivasan goes to Mount Hebron High School in Maryland. He's been very active in Junior Achievements entrepreneur programs. Jayshree, what's your question?
Hi, I'm so inspired by what I've heard so far, and I'm beyond thankful to be here today. Starting a business with Junior Achievements Rising Women program has truly been such a rewarding experience for me. That's why I'm concerned to learn that nearly 1 in 4 teens are less likely to consider starting a business as an adult as a result of the COVID-19 impact. Amid this climate, how do we restore their faith in entrepreneurship and inspire today's teens to become tomorrow's entrepreneurs?
Yeah, Sahil, you mentioned a lot about, COVID and some of the different challenges and opportunities you're seeing for your own business and for your own enterprises during this time. What is your answer to Jayshree?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jayshree, and it's a deeply troubling time. And I think, look, you have the stock market, which everyone wants to look to as a sign of the economy, and it's doing great. And so people have this perception that things are okay for the average American or for most people, and that is simply not the case. A lot of the country is continuing to suffer, and we have a lot of people who are going to be in trouble without help. And so as a group, as the private sector comes together, we need to support people from the ground up. We need to remove regulations so that business owners and would-be entrepreneurs can start businesses easily. It's still such a pain in so many states to go through the process of registering your LLC or starting your new business. The regulations are layering on top of one another and creating barriers to young entrepreneurs as they go out to start. We need to make it more accessible. We need to make it easier. And we need to support young people as they go off to start their new ventures.
Yeah, I wanted to bring in Yaneli here too, because you offer a lot of resources through, your own social media, Miss Be Helpful, as well as through Next Gen Personal Finance. What are some resources that are out there that people should really be taking advantage of, teenagers should know about during this pandemic in particular?
Well, I think for me personally, one of the awesome resources that I get to work on is FinCap Friday, which is a weekly current event series that I put together with NGPF, and it comes out on YouTube and on the blog. And one of the things that I recently talked about was pandemic entrepreneurs, which is this phenomenon that this year, almost 1 million more entrepreneurs filed for an EIN number to establish their business as compared to the same time last year in 2019. So when we say like COVID is going to scare young people and it's going to restrict entrepreneurship, actually the data does not support that. We want to bring in teenagers to entrepreneurship, which is why we have a whole mini unit at NGPF. So one of the things that's amazing about the work we're doing is that it's all free. So if you're a teen right now and you're watching this, or you're a teacher and you're watching this, go to ngpf.org. Everything on the site is free, including entrepreneurship lesson plans, activities, games, videos, and then that links to other resources as well. NGPF is a great hub, but it's not the only place. There's so many free resources online, and we have to tap the free ones because to a lot of the points that were already made, certain schools just don't have the budget to be able to make that curriculum accessible. So we have to keep it free, and that's a core part of our mission.
Do you find, Yaneli, that teens are ever sharing your information with one another? And what do you think is the best way? Again, we're hoping teachers are watching and that they're using this information. But if you just want it for yourself and you want to share it with a club or share it with a group of friends, what are the best ways to do that? Can you do that?
Absolutely. And you should. Like, honestly, self-study is one of the best ways to learn anything because you are teaching it to yourself and nobody can take that knowledge from you once you know it. So what I would say is go onto the website and others as well, not just ours. But if you go onto ngpf.org and you click on the curriculum, you can do any of the lessons completely by yourself at home. Click the articles and read them, answer the questions, watch the videos, and devote your time to yourself to really improve your own knowledge of money and personal finance. And then, like you said earlier, Sharon, if the students are finding things that they like are funny, this video, this meme, share it, send it to somebody and say, check out this video. You're going to learn about index funds, which I didn't know about until I watched this video, you know, little things like that. So it's definitely about putting yourself out there to find the time in your schedule. If you can find time to, you know, shop online and talk to your friends on Instagram, you can find time, 15 minutes to study personal finance for yourself, you know, at home. I think it's definitely possible, especially on the phone or on the computer nowadays.
Absolutely. You have the time to study and you have the time to share it too, because you're going to be sharing stuff anyway.
Exactly.
So share some of the personal finance knowledge you got too. I want to get everyone's input on this one. Sophia Moreno is joining us from Tempe, Arizona, and she's a great question I think everyone can answer. Sophia, what's your question?
First of all, it's such a pleasure to be here and representing the state of Arizona. My question is, in terms of financial literacy during our current virtual world, what is the single most important thing for young adults to understand?
You know, you just gave a lot of information about next gen personal finance, but what is something that you kind of put out there over and over again because you think it's so important for people to know in terms of financial literacy, for teens in particular?
Yeah. I think for teens in particular, it's tough because there's two positions. One, and your question is the single most important, which I know makes it hard, but I'm gonna say two things. One is your age is your biggest privilege. You have so much time ahead of you in your life to take advantage of, to benefit from what Sahil mentioned, which is compounding returns or compounding interest. So you gotta start, even if you don't have money right now because you're too young, you gotta start learning about how investing in the stock market works, because that is the greatest generator of wealth in our time. And for me, growing up in a Latino household, my parents are from Dominican Republic and they're immigrants. They never had the type of job where you could go clock in, clock out and have a 401k. They never had that type of job. They worked unforgiving jobs that didn't allow that. And so for me, taking advantage of a 401k and learning about a Roth IRA, which are options to get a tax advantaged investment happening in the stock market, even if you don't have a 401k, the earlier you learn about this, the better off you're going to be, because when you do get your first job, when you do start making money, you don't have to pause and learn. You already know. So when you get the money, you can just get started and take action immediately. So that's what I would say, is to start learning about investing and generating wealth now, because that knowledge will definitely benefit you when you do come into the money, because you might not have the money now, and that's okay. But the time that you have is what's on your side. So time and knowledge is what I would say.
Your knowledge as soon as you possibly can is essentially what you're saying, correct?
Absolutely. Build the knowledge, and then as soon as you come into money to be able to apply the knowledge, do it as soon as possible.
You know, both of my teens got their working papers when they were 14. And so in New York, that's when you can start working. And the summer job money, the camp counselor money, all of that went to an account. And at the end of the summer, my son, my oldest, had enough money to put into exactly what Yaneli's talking about, a Roth IRA. And I, had to help him with it, or, tell him a little bit about it. But this is an account now that is in his name. This is his money, and it's going to be able to grow over time. And when she's talking about an IRA, an individual retirement account, teens like, why do I need to put my money in something like that? But this is an account where you put your money in, you can take it out anytime you want, your own contributions. Okay. So it could kind of be like an emergency fund. It could be your, part of your college savings fund. But that, what it allows you to do is to invest in stocks, invest in mutual funds, invest in things that allow you to build wealth. There's, of course, a lot of information that our panelists could share about these types of things. But I just want to say that personally, I think that all of you, or many of you, are entrepreneurs and you're already creating your own income. That income should go into a Roth IRA, at least part of it, right away. You're able to do that. If you're working, you have earned income, you're able to do that right now. And that might be a great end of the year thing to do, to start that, what Sahil was talking about, compound interest, building that over decades of working and saving and investing. Akbar, what is the one thing that you would say that, a teen should be thinking about right now in terms of financial literacy, understanding their money and building wealth?
Well, building wealth, and Yaneli kind of touched on this, but I would say tap into your creativity because you are your own business. You have that power within you. And, you know, the person prior to asked a question in regards to, you know, navigating through COVID-19. And it made me think about how creative I was during this time. And I think all of us found something different or new about ourselves during these stay-at-home orders. So I'm going to show you something, a little show and tell. I created this mask to go into like large stadiums and concerts. And this is a prototype that I had made. And, you know, I started working on the process of getting the business and, you know, I got the EIN number. I did all of the things that I'd never done. Now, I've been in the entertainment space. So in essence, I'm my own business, but it was a little different in having to go through all of the rehearsals and talking to my attorneys and all these different things. What am I saying? When you're younger, you're a lot closer to your creative side than you are when you get a little older. Not to say you can't be creative when you're older, but you're a lot more, your brains are just firing. Tap into that, write it down, journal it down, because I'm telling you, every single person on this call has 1, 2, 3, 10 money ideas. And sometimes they're the ones that you're just walking the dog or you're in front and it pops up in your head. You go, that will never happen. That will never. No, write it down because you come back to it. And now you start investing time in researching, just like some of those like, hey, go on, use some of these tools. You know what? I had that one idea. I'm encouraging everyone to get a book, a blank book, a journal of ideas, just for ideas. Whether you do anything with them or not, you can always circle back. You know what? I did have this idea. Write it out fully, and you'll see one of those things are going to allow you guys to jump into entrepreneurship, and you would have never thought it would elevate you into another atmosphere.
Absolutely, Akbar. You know, and just writing down what you're interested in, what your skills are, can be so helpful. You know, there's a teenager in my neighborhood who loves skateboarding, and he thought he was going to have his freshman year in college on campus. He actually decided to take a gap year because no one's on campus. What is he going to do with his time? How is he going to make money? He decided to get a group of kids, 5-year-old, 8-year-olds, together who are interested in skateboarding and do lessons and charge the parents money. The parents want them to have something to do. They're willing to pay something for it. And he's able to now create a business doing what he loves to do anyway. He would be out skateboarding. Why do it by yourself? You can do it with some young people and encourage. So there are probably many ideas that you all have and that you've already pursued in creating your own business, but trying to find a way, masked, outside, in COVID, to create a business. I thought it was really, it was important that he did something, but it was really interesting how he used his skills and his passion to come up with something quickly. Rianka, what would you say is something that teens should be doing right now in terms of focusing on financial literacy and one tip that you think that they should definitely take away from today?
Absolutely. I would share, just as Akbar has just shared, is that as we get older, we realize that everything is figure outable. Very scientific term there. Everything is figure outable. And what I mean by that, and tapping into your creativity is so important, because as you just continue to navigate life, you're going to start to see some voids, and it is going to be up to you to fill those voids. What do I mean? Even with my career, starting off as an entrepreneur, again, I just wanted to be a financial planner, had no idea that I was going to be a business owner. In the traditional world of financial planning or wealth management, you have to have a minimum investable assets of $1 million. Well, I did not come from a family or community where I knew anyone who had $1 million. And so as I started to ascend in my career, friends and peers wanted to be clients of mine. And unfortunately, I kept having to tell them no. But I strongly believe that personal finance should not be held hostage to those who have a high socioeconomic or come from a high socioeconomic background. So what did I do? I left. I started my own firm, and now have since merged with my partner, Lizetta, and have 2050 Wealth Partners, where we don't charge the traditional way of AUM or assets under management. We charge in a way that's retainer. And so we filled a void where it was a large gap of Americans that were being looked over because of the traditional way of charging and working with a financial planner. So not only did we fill that void and fill that gap, of charging a retainer. We are meeting clients where they are. So even pre-pandemic, our firm was 100% virtual and still is 100% virtual, where even if they move, I'm in Maryland right now, and so even if they move across country, we can still meet with them and maintain that relationship. So my just advice to you is that as you get older, as you continue to navigate life, get that book, write down your ideas, and know that everything is figure outable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But sometimes it's hard to figure out some things, Sahil, running a $2.5 billion fund. I'm wondering, what was the first thing that you figured out? People need to understand this better. I need to be able to break this down on social media in some way. I mean, you're dealing with such complex issues and complex strategies, but there are some basic things that you think everyone should know that you highlight on social media. Can you talk about what one of those things would be, besides compound interest, that you think that is really important for people to take away with today?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm someone who spends a bulk of my day thinking about investments, thinking about stocks, thinking about companies, what makes a great company, all of these incredible entrepreneurs out there. And the one thing I've learned and what I'd want to give to you all is the single best investment you will ever make in your life is an investment in yourself. It really is. Invest in your knowledge, read books, read articles, things you're interested in, invest in relationships, invest in your network. As Akbar pointed out, it's so important to find mentors, find people who will champion your career for you, invest in those relationships, invest in your family and your friends, being around them, spending time. These are the things that build up over time. They compound, as we've talked about. Those are the things that go so far beyond just money and wealth creation and are so important to who you become as a person and being the type of person that you want to be when you grow up.
And Sahil, let me just add to that, if that's okay. I just want to add quickly, and you're so right. The most important person you can invest in is yourself. But the hardest person to know is yourself because of denial and distraction. And more so than ever, we're in a critical time now because we have so much stuff coming at us. You can use it as a tool. You can use it for good, but you can also get lost. So if you don't know yourself, it's going to be very, very hard to invest in yourself. And so when we talk about writing things down in a book, that's you investing in yourself, taking time to put everything away, put the distraction. Because if you're distracted, how many times have you guys all had this? You're on your Instagram and then you get a text message and you click on the text message, you start doing it, and then an article pops up and you click on the article. You hadn't sent out an Instagram, you haven't sent out a text, and you haven't even read the article. Why? Because we're all distracted, and it can be very hard, and that can become an ongoing vicious cycle where you never get to spend time with yourself, and then you look back, boom, 10 years is gone. You're like, hold on, what have I done with myself? What have I done with my life? So you have to. Sahil, thank you so much for saying that. You fired me up when you said that. You have to invest in yourself, but you have to understand distraction and denial of yourself will not allow you to know yourself better so you can grow.
Absolutely, Akbar. These teens have had such a great opportunity being part of junior achievement in the first place. And what I always like to say to everyone of every age, it's important to be present, to be mindful, and to be grateful. And when you do those three things, when you take the few seconds out of your day that it takes to do that, you are so inspired and so rejuvenated to do more. So I think that's great advice from both of you. Thank you so much. We had a lot of students send in their questions today, and we wanted to end with one more. We had a young student write in and they asked, what do you think people in positions of power will have to do in order for all students from all backgrounds to be able to have an equal opportunity at success? And that's a question that we could go into for quite some time. But if any of you have any quick thoughts about that, what would you say?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Yes,
I have two thoughts. Yeah, so two thoughts. One would be that you have to, as a person who has power, access to power and money and wealth, you will have to be willing to sacrifice some of that power and some of that wealth so that others can have access to some of that power and some of that wealth. And that's very hard to do. There are studies that show that if you give monkeys a couple of apples and then you take one back, even though they had none to start with, they freak out when you take an apple and leave them with just one because of loss aversion. But people in power who have a lot of wealth have to get to a point where they're willing to sacrifice some of it to give others an opportunity. And then the second thing they have to be willing to do is learn and educate themselves and invest in their own knowledge. Read books like, The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. I just finished that book and it was incredible. It opened my eyes to how there are systemic issues of lack of access to capital and home mortgages and things like that in communities of color. So we have to be wealth. We have power and we have wealth. We got to educate ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great answer. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wrap it because we're at 2:00 right now. But listen, there are so many great questions that continue to come in, and I want to make sure that you all, as Akbar have said, are networking. Make sure that you're following all of our panelists. Reach out to them. DM them, send them your questions. I want to thank you all so very much for joining us today. Thank you for leading the charge, Jack Koskowski from Junior Achievement. Thank you for partnering with us to have this. There are so many fantastic questions from students all over the nation, and we appreciate those. But we also need to thank our panelists who've done a great job in answering your questions. Sahil Bloom, Rianka Dorsonville, Yaneli Espinal, Akbar Bajabiamila, and our special guest, Mark Morial. They were generous with their time, with their insights. And if you want to watch some clips from this event, you can go to cnbc.com/investinYou. You got to remember that, just like they said, invest in yourself, invest in you. And remember, it's important to keep these candid conversations going. Make sure that you're having them with your friends on social media, texting them, talking about it. It's the only way that we're going to be able to build a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive future. I'm Sharon Epperson for CNBC, and thanks so much for joining us. Take care.